I am honored to be here. I'm honored to be here because I care so much about the rise of the female founder. I thankfully have witnessed firsthand the power of a 50
Mm.
50 leadership team now aboard, as well as just watching female founders rise around me. And not only is it powerful, it drives inclusion and it drives innovation and it drives higher profits. So I'm happy to be here and really dig into the discussion.
I was with you and I need you to explain, we said it drive, how does 50-50 drive higher profits?
Good question. So when you look at companies who have taken on the initiative to have more women leaders,
Yeah.
more women on their boards or in their leadership as CEO and many other roles, you actually see 35% higher ROI. Just because there's a diversity vision on how you look at products, how you approach a market,
Huh.
as well as what you spend and how you spend. And therefore, it's actually attributed to about 35% higher profits.
There's a good reason. If we didn't need any other reasons, that's a good reason right there. I'd love to have you take us back. I kind of want to hear your origin story. When did you know that you wanted to be the boss? Or maybe not the boss, but you wanted to lead. Two different things, kind of.
Yeah, well, I can share my mom was an entrepreneur.
Ah,
So I got to see that firsthand. She traveled quite a bit. My dad was then an entrepreneur, inspired by her later on. So my dad was actually a French chef and watched my mom sell housewares to a whole bunch of different major retailers. And he was in a different business. And after watching her, he switched and he ended up selling like Japanese knives and high-end kitchenware because he had that expertise. So I watched both of them kind of build their own business, and I decided to go against the grain and actually do 20 years in the corporate space before I leaped in to start my own company just before the pandemic.
so there's always in every origin story, there's a things are going along great, like you said, 20 years in a corporate space, but then something snapped, something changed. There was that, I call it the first unusual thing. What would tell us about that? So others can pay
Yeah.
attention when that happens and they go, oh, that's the same thing that happened to Michelle.
So I hope they don't have this moment. My best friend passed away from colon
Oh,
cancer
oh.
at 36, and we were friends
Mm,
since we were six and played rep soccer
mm,
together. And she was an artist, and she loved life, and she loved, having her own garden, and really life for her was about appreciating every moment
yeah.
and looking at it from art, like from a view of how she can conceptualize that in a different medium. She never understood why I worked so much. I kind of became a workaholic, I think, because my parents were both entrepreneurs. I was always trying to get ahead. And I had an odd experience as a someone who just got into university. And my parents said, that's wonderful. We're not paying for university. So if you'd like to go, you better want to be a doctor or a lawyer because we're not paying, and you might as well do what you love. We're both entrepreneurs. Unless you want to do one of those two things, just go out and do it. So I had that moment of what am I going to do? How am I going to spend my money? And I actually took a year off and went to go live in Australia and work to live for an entire year, kind of experiencing out in Australia. Got into international business, came home, went for the first 2 weeks, interviewed all of my teachers because it was my money,
Oh,
and
sure.
asked them, what business had you facilitated so I can learn from you? And all of them were universities, like
They're
academic
academics.
majors,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they understood English majors and science majors, and happened to be a business professor. And I took my money back 10 days into the program and decided to, I worked for a telco for 6 years, kind of when they were moving from analog to digital, and just fell in love with the pace of technology. So kind of went the opposite route, and was on the vision of hopefully climbing that ladder in the corporate space.
So I'm curious in that we're so framed by the experiences of the people around us, whether they're intentionally modeling behavior or not. You now have a very, very strong theme thread that runs through. I've looked at your talks and look at how you write, and this idea of female empowerment is very, very important to you. I'm curious, in addition to your mom, I have to imagine there were some strong women leaders that you worked with that did they become mentors, or did you just kind of observe them from the side?
Yeah, no, I was very lucky. One of the first companies I worked for was a telco. Um, and I really got that there wasn't a lot of women in what I did, being there for 6 years. And when I came into my next role and I went into online shopping and affiliate marketing, there was this one incredible woman who actually had a seat at the leadership table, and it was 9 leaders and her. And she was strategic partnerships. She was 5'2" if and she had a science degree and she held her own. She very much taught me a lot of what I know today in the sense of building that rapport with that relationship and putting the client first and figuring out solutions, looking at the problems and finding the solutions, and even the way that she displayed those insights to the client are all things that I learned throughout my career. And she sheltered me from a lot of the politics that happened there,
Oh,
but there was quite a bit of politics, and she helped me navigate how to still rise up even when there's barriers. And I saw those barriers, but thankfully she found a path for me on the side, and I still was able to get to the title I wanted and some of the roles I wanted. And after getting out of that 8 year experience, I very much wanted to help others. And luckily, the role I was approached for was at an organization that was led in 2015 by a Brazilian GM. It was in the prepaid space, and he intentionally was building a 50-50 leadership team in
oh,
2015 and offered me whichever role I wanted.
oh,
If I
wow.
wanted to do sales or if I wanted to do marketing. So I was able to take on that role and watch him intentionally build this 50-50 leadership team, and watch that company was in 30 organizations, like 30 countries, and we were the only country that had this initiative. And to see how much we achieved in 3 years, that I then intentionally created my team to be 50-50, and made a statement that I would never go to any other organization that didn't have that intention. So when I was approached to move into the blockchain space as a chief client officer, I said, I can only join if you make a 50-50 organization. And he came back 3 months later and offered me the position with a 50-50.
And in those three examples that you gave, it sounded like with the Brazilian one that you met and exceeded the targets that you set for yourself. And I think you're placing that back to the fact that you had this 50-50 dynamic that is all, it permeates the organization in that sense, right? Because it's product and sales and marketing, and it's not in traditional, I'm going to guess, non-traditional female roles, if you will, because what we will often see, the woman at the table is the salesperson or the marketing person and the relationship person, which is just a bias, right? And as I said before we got on air, I've been fighting for women engineers my whole career. Since I was 30, because they tended to ask the best questions in meetings, and they were quite. Yeah, I just was like, why aren't there more of you? And it's just because it as it turned out, I found out the answer. It wasn't cool, and they didn't get asked out in high school and junior high when things are so socially charged that it was just not cool. And so I think that's changing now. That's changed a lot. But
Yes.
I want to go back to this idea of there's probably a headwind, because you do a lot of public speaking. So what are the questions you're still hearing? You're like, good gosh, why am I still getting that question from people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, definitely. And first, thank you for advocating for women in tech. I think it's so powerful to have that vision of women at the core of the technology that's being built, because it's for society. It's not for one
Right.
part of society. It's
Right.
for society,
Right.
and that's very much why I believe in the diversity mission. And I think the comment that 80% of, well, 20% of women will apply for a job that they're not qualified for, but 80% of men will apply for a job they're not qualified for. And it's because women are looking to tick the box to make sure that they have all 10 things. And the gentleman's probably looking at two and just
I'm good.
sits through the
Yeah.
meeting and just talks about the two. So it's also a cultural mentoring piece, because even as I hear female founders speak about their organization and they say, I have this small company or I have this small platform. But if you had spoken to maybe a male founder about the same piece, I have this incredible ecosystem and I have a numerous amount of partners and we're facilitating all of these different products, but they have the same infrastructure. It's just in how we describe and take that kind of confidence piece to allow us to see the opportunity. So I think like one of the biggest things for me is in risk is opportunity, that you have to take the risk to get to the opportunity. So I think it's that mentoring piece to get you there. And that's why I really gravitate to all of these women in blockchain, women in identity, women in payments, women in tech. There's so many of these free organizations. Some of them have small membership fees, but it gets you into a community. So I say to all the women listening, and even to the men, there's organizations in the same fold, like meetups and so on. If you want to learn something, or you want to understand blockchain, or you want to understand payments or identity, just go to one of these free meetups, listen to all the incredible content that's out there at the moment due to the pandemic that we live in, and learn and connect and network and build your confidence. Because though I'm doing a lot of speaking now, even when I posted this to share, my experience in speaking all started with one panel in Long Island on prepaid in 2017, because I intentionally had set the goal in January. And thankfully, a male, I would call him an industry competitor, I helped him do something, and he in turn got me on this panel and put my name forth. And
Nice.
if it wasn't for him, I don't know how quickly my journey in speaking would have occurred. And it wasn't just me that he helped so many. So I think it just takes one person to truly push an industry forward by allowing more voices to be heard.
One of the things about the TED platform and TEDx is one idea literally can change the world. And there are hundreds of millions of proof points of that, where a talk has touched someone, and that was the talk they needed. My wife coached me on my TED talk, and she said, "Remember," it just the last thing in my ear as I walked on a stage in front of 4,000 people was, "Remember, you only have to change one mind," and which helps take the stress down a little. And afterwards, you're standing in the audience, and this young man came up and he said, "I want to thank you, Mr. Sylvester. You gave me permission to think the way I do." And I was like,
Mm,
that's my one
that's so
guy,
beautiful.
right? That's my
Yeah.
one guy. So this talk will get legs and get out there and talk to people. Here's a question for you. What brings out your competitive streak?
Yeah, I think, I'm a soccer player. I played rep
Oh,
soccer as a kid. So
sports.
I
Okay,
think
there you
I,
go.
I just, yeah, want to
Sports.
facilitate the best that I can. And I try and teach my kids that, like, yes, you could finish this project because it looks done. But if you spend another 20 minutes on it, it could be better than just okay. And I think because potentially I didn't go to university And I was in the corporate world trying to get to VP level, but didn't have the credentials
Mm.
to apply to go work at a bank, because I just didn't have that piece of paper. So I overachieved everywhere I went to feel that I deserved the job that, or the next title that I was going for. And I still had imposter syndrome. Like I can share when I launched my company, I didn't put Michelle Beyo CEO. For the first 6 months, I just called myself a founder until I got to revenue and had an employee, because I didn't want to be the CEO of nobody. And I was still changing my mindset. Even though I was just a chief client officer for a blockchain organization, it took me time to feel that had the strong footing in the role that I had. And I think that's one of the reasons why women don't jump in to take the risk, is they need the self-talk and the mentorship to realize that, oh my goodness, everything you just did was impressive. Because I just spoke to a female CEO who's building a blockchain infrastructure that's helping, with vaccine tracking and with farming and identity and ownership. And she's so humble. And I think sometimes it takes a reflection of just taking a minute to share how impressed you are with someone else to build up their confidence. Because I think we all don't completely stand in the space that we deserve at all times. And I think if we do that more often and help others do so, we can have more founders out there, not just women, but actually more founders who are trying to make their mark on the world.
Michelle, I think that message is going to be heard loud and clear, and women are going to come up to you for the rest of your life and say thank you because they heard you talk or they read what you said. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I will give a caveat. It is challenging. You do have to have grit. You have to have the ability to want to talk and network with people and make that innovation in space. And it isn't always financially sound. But if you take on the risk, the things you want to do in life will come to you, and you'll get to be more purposeful and achieve things that matter.